we're watching Pokemon Concierge. And the Psyduck in there, I have a Psyduck plushie, and the Psyduck in there is so cute, and it reminded me of the plushie.
It's so cute.
I've seen a clip of the Psyduck from Pokemon Concierge. I'm really looking forward to watching that, but like I say, I'll wait until Pokemon TV goes down, and then I'll smoothly go on to
transition.
Yeah, absolutely. Only 15 episodes left to go of season 2, which, believe me, is an achievement. And these are long.
There are so many episodes.
So many episodes. There's like over... It's like 60 episodes a season. There's over 1,000 episodes because they ran for like 25 seasons. It's crazy.
I think that's simply too much Pokemon.
I think that's too much.
Like,
honestly,
episodes.
Some of them are like really good and some of them are real duds, and you can tell that they had to get out an animated show every week, and sometimes they were just like, oh, whatever the fuck.
Yeah. That's wild, funny. Isn't it?
I watched one today and it was so weird because it was like all Western themed, and there's like, we have to get the Pokemon to the town, and then they get to the town and it's another like Japanese suburb from the 90s. I'm like, why is it that no matter what happens when we get to the town, it's always a Japanese suburb from the 90s? Anyway,
because it was cheaper to draw to reuse.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, this is nothing like the ecosystem we've been shown for the rest of this episode, which was like explicitly American Midwestern desert. Anyway,
if there's one thing we know about Game Freak, it's that they don't put a huge amount of money into the things that they make.
Well, I mean, they are like absolutely churning them out, obviously, because it's like, it is weekly, or it was weekly in Japan for like a very long time. There's no season break, so...
Oh, wow.
You know,
oh my god.
So they just keep going.
How old were we all? Can you remember when the animated series first came to the UK?
I was 10. I was like 5 or 6 when it came out, but by the time it was on TV in the UK, I was about 10, I think.
Was that on COTV?
Eventually.
That's how I watched it, on COTV.
As did
Probably
I.
how I watched it then. I can't remember what channel it was, but...
It was on Sky for a long time, because I remember some kids at school had Sky, and I coveted the fact that they could watch it. I remember going to their house once to watch one episode, and I was like, you're living the high life, James, watching Pokemon whenever you want. And then I remember them advertising it for CITV and saying, you know, Pokemon the animated series, it's coming to CITV. It'll be on, what was it called? SMTV Live with At and Deck and Kat Deely.
Yeah.
Oh god, I used to watch that religiously.
Same. And they advertised it for months and months, or what felt like a lifetime as a 7-year-old. And the Saturday finally came around, and the night before, I got a sickness bug. There's so many stories.
Right, I was
of
going
mine
to say,
start
all
like
of these
this.
stories are like, and Liam was tragically like waifishly ill
But
throughout
I
the
was
proceedings.
so unwell from throwing up that I have a distinct memory of having to sleep on the settee the night before, because like my parents couldn't even pick me up without me throwing up.
Oh no!
And then watching the first episode with my dad as I threw up in a bucket repeatedly. And I remember like we rewatched the first season a few years ago, and on that first episode I was like, it's making me feel queasy. We need to skip this one.
Oh no.
We have to add that to the anthology. Chunder anthology.
Oh, it's too many times. Why was I sick so much as a kid?
Ooh, the Chunder Chronicles.
Oh, I don't like that. I don't like that being my lasting legacy.
That's good.
I've blessed it. It's happened.
Have you listened to that Indieventure podcast? There's the one that likes the really nice narrative games and the visual novels and that. There's the one that finds like these really cool pics, and then there's the one who talks about throwing up every episode. It's not intentional. I really don't want to talk about this every episode. It's just all my stories involve throwing up.
It all comes back to vomit. Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Indieventure, a video game podcast all about the wonderful world of indie games. As always, I'm joined with my two co-hosts, Rebecca Jones.
Hello.
And Liam Richardson.
Hi.
And me, Rachel Watts. And this episode, we're talking about time loops. Yes, so we had this idea that we would release this episode because there was a leap day this year, but it's us, so it's not going to happen. But we're still going to talk about time loops because they're cool. Yeah. Time loops in terms of in story, time loops as a mechanic, and time loops as like kind of like a metaphor, and just other really cool indie games with time loops in them. So yeah, time loops, love them.
For clarity, there is still going to be a leap day this year. Like,
sorry, I'm quite tired.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, we were going to release this on leap day, which was the idea, but then it kind of didn't end up happening, which is fine. But yeah, we do not have the power to cancel leap day. I might do it if I did, just to prove that I could, but It's not. It's not what's happened. It will be in the past, I think, by the time people get to listen to this.
Yeah, we were on track to do it for Leap Day, and then
we took
I
a
don't
longer
think we
break
ever
over
were.
Christmas.
Were
We took a
we
longer
not?
break over Christmas as well. So,
But we agreed after Christmas.
did we?
We only we only agreed on the episodes up to Christmas, and then we came back in January.
Well, this is exciting.
And all three of us were like, oh yeah, well, it'll be released on the 29th. Leap year, time loops, that makes sense. Something you only pointed out the other day, Rebecca. We don't know why we came to that conclusion. About why Leap Day is a time
a weird time thing and another weird time thing. And it was like, yes, brilliant. It was probably really late at night in a planning session when none of us could read a calendar
Yes.
and work out that like the
Yes.
29th
Must
is
have
our is our off week. But it's exciting. Someone I know gets to have a birthday this year. She only gets one every 4 years, so that'll be nice.
Woo!
So how
Nice.
old is she? How many birthdays has she celebrated on the actual day?
I think this will be the second one. It's one of my cousins, so she's 8.
A listener, I assume. So happy birthday
But she
to.
better be. How are we going to get these numbers up if my entire family doesn't download them individually?
So good.
Oh, dear.
Hell yes. Right, gang. Should we kick it off with like maybe our favorite time loop games? Is that a bit too wide, or should we just?
I'm
I'm
happy
just
with
keen
that.
to know what both of you guys' like favorite time loop games is to see if we overlap, because I don't think we've really chatted about this.
No, we haven't. So I'll be interested if we do, because yeah, I want to know what games you like with time loops in them.
So who wants to go first?
Well, I'm paralysed with fear, so someone else should.
I feel like, you know what? After the vomit story, I feel like I've spoken too much. Rachel, should you go first?
Oh, no.
Things have been said that cannot be undone. Time's arrow marches on.
Oh, hello. I like
Nice.
that.
I like
Okay.
it.
And then it curves and goes right back round to the beginning. So,
Time's arrow is a
that anything?
boomerang.
Ooh. Oh no, because that reminds me of that bit in Sherlock, the boomerang. And I don't know about
goodness.
that. Boomerang. You know?
I
that
don't
guy.
know that reference.
Yeah, I do.
It's
I
okay.
do recall.
Actually, maybe maybe it's fine. Because that is awful. I think it was like one of the later seasons. Anyway, time loops. Not Sherlock.
Yeah, no, let's not get
We
sidetracked.
said would be normal this episode. All three of us were like, we're too tired. There'll be no gremlin energy. What is it?
It's
Vibes are
just a
off.
different gremlin energy when we're tired. We know this.
I feel
this
very
we know.
dopey.
Oh, same.
Oh,
Almost
same.
like this day has lasted so much longer than it should have done. Because-
oh yeah, we're like Bill Murray at the end of Groundhog Day.
Oh,
I like
God,
that. Okay.
yeah.
Yep.
I feel that.
Oh, we could have done a bit where this is like the 8th time we've recorded this podcast. Anyway, Rachel, please tell me about your favourite time loop game.
He gets so fucked up in that movie. It
He
scares
does.
me.
Yeah.
It scares me. But it's funny because Groundhog Day relates to the game that I really like, but I've talked to death about on this podcast, so I won't talk about too much, which is my favourite game of last year, or one of them, In Stars and Time, which is a
yes.
Groundhog Day situation. And I think why I like In Stars and Time, very briefly, for those who haven't listened to the other episodes, it's kind of like a game where there's an RPG party, you play as a character, they know they're in a time loop, and slowly over the course of the game, as you loop, this character goes through all these loops and slowly and psychologically starts to break down, which is very creepy. And I think the reason why I like In Stars and Time as a time loop game is that I think it addresses time looping as a story, as a mechanic, and as a metaphor. I think it hits all three targets, which I
Nice.
love. I love. And it's like it uses the looping mechanic as like a fourth wall breaking metaphor about the nature of video games, which is why I was very impressed with it. This idea that to take part in video games is to essentially be like loop constantly in
Yes.
every
Yeah.
aspect of play as well, right? And so
Love that.
this game kind of held up a mirror to you as a player and was like, look what you've done. You've made this cute character loop. My end of game loop count was 200 times. And you're a terrible person and how dare you. But also this idea of looping in games and to be a player and to loop that many times, even though we're kind of used to that, is kind of wild. That as gamers, capital G, gamers, we are okay with that aspect of gaming. and it's almost like so ingrained that it's cool, I'll just attempt this boss fight for the 600th time, or I will save this city. I'm talking about Frostpunk. This is my personal loop that felt like I was in hell. I'll just save this city over and over again until I succeed. And it's like failure as well. You're constantly failing. And so I just thought In Stars and Time was a good game about games. And it made me think about my behaviors when playing video games. And looping is one of them. It's weird.
I don't know whether to be really glad or really irked that this has come up so early, because this was like my big revelation thinking about this earlier today, was the way that like time loops like comment on the nature of video games. And I know that I need to check out In Stars and Time, because so much of it sounds like my like exact
your
thing.
shit.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Exactly. But I was thinking about I was like trying to make a list of all the games that I was like, these are the games that I'd like to talk about, and then I was like losing track of what actually has a time loop in it and what I've just played so much that it feels like there is this time looping element to it.
Interesting. Yeah.
And that was when I went on to this. So yeah, it's like, it's brilliant when that. I've also been thinking a lot about like games that comment on games today for a different thing for work. And that all just kind of like comes together in this beautiful way. And I think that like, the time loop idea in games just does that so well. Gonna absolutely stumble over my own brain for a second, but I was thinking about I know it's not strictly indie. It's not indie at all, but we have said that this is not necessarily a conversation that we can keep within the indie sphere entirely. But I was thinking about like, what would be my favorite game with a time loop in it, like regardless of like provenance almost. And I was like, well, it'd have to be Life is Strange, right? Which is not a traditional time loop. It doesn't restart like the gameplay loop is not the time loop, but there are time loops within it because you as the player character have the ability to rewind time, to replay scenes, to like use information that you gain to change the outcomes of things. And of course, that whole game, the reason that original game really took off was partly because of the way that it kind of like put a spotlight on the mechanics that are being used in that case in adventure games, and then allowed you as the player like actual in-story control of the systems that the game runs on. And I feel like In Stars and Time is a very, very good like indie. Almost is In Stars and Time a good indie equivalent to Life is Strange, because I feel like this is selling me more and more on this game that I know I want to play anyway.
If it will bump up your list of games to play, then yes, it's exactly like Life is Strange. It's actually really similar to Life is Strange.
She knows how to get to me. She does. She does.
I think that's an absolutely fair comparison for sure, because it's also like the nature of playing and messing with the structure of a game, and the game giving you the ability to do that. And that's cool as well. Yeah, without breaking the fiction, which is great. It's like whenever you can work anything like that in without breaking the fiction, it's like, next level, like brilliant. So good.
That is what makes, I think, I'm glad you've mentioned In Stars and Time, because I do think, based on what you said last year, it feels like the game that sits firmly in the middle of like what makes time loops fit so comfortably within the medium, right? Like, yes, like you say, all games are fundamentally at their heart a time loop, in the sense that we put these characters through situations repeatedly to try and find the one solution. And I was thinking today a little bit about how in the medium of games, they really let us examine like the futility of the medium, but they're also a great way to highlight mastery. So it's almost like a power. It lets us see our own power levels and sort of our own skills develop in real time by putting us through the same situation in a way that we can't do in real life, really.
Yes,
failure is the consequences are so small compared to what they're like in real life.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think probably the only other game that does it so well, that has that. In fact, probably not actually. I'd say that In Stars and Time is maybe better because it also explicitly breaks the fourth wall to let you examine yourself as a player. But maybe another good recommendation, it's not actually one I was going to bring today, but I do think we need to mention Hades, because that was maybe one of the biggest, most prominent game that used the nature of a time loop to... It's not really a time loop, actually, is it? It's more of just a repetition.
Odd one, though, because it's like, I see where you're coming from because everything resets, right?
Yeah.
Everything in the story, it resets like mechanically like a time loop, but because of the way the story is being told, it doesn't really position
very
it that
linear,
way in the
isn't it?
narrative, right? But it's
Yeah,
because
it's a
they're
very
all
good
like
point.
nothing's really dying, and the idea of like things not changing significantly is kind of all part of the idea of the Greek underworld,
Mhm.
right? So it's an interesting one though, because it's mechanically, you're right, it's time loop. That's kind of the nature of
Yeah.
you know, of a lot of roguelites like that.
They're all about loops, right? They're all, and I guess Hades broke out of that idea that you could have a linear thread that runs through the loops rather than it being continuously something like Brotato or Vampire Survivors,
Yes.
where, you know, you get different variations, but the loop is always persistent, and that's more the, you know, the fundamental core of games, like we mentioned before. But yeah, no, it's dead interesting. I think In Stars and Time really, you know, it just examines that and says, okay, well, look at these interesting, incredible things that we can do. Yeah, I need to play that game.
It's a good comparison as well, because Zagreus in Hades is a willing participant in his looping. He is someone who...
Interesting.
And you as a player are also, you both want the same thing. You want to escape the underworld. And so there's like a consistency in terms of like what the player character wants and then what you want as a player. And what In Stars and Time does is the opposite. It's you want to keep looping, and this character deliberately wants to break the cycle to stop looping. And so that dichotomy of these two clashing conflicts is like creates a really interesting story. But yeah, roguelikes all about looping, which is why I don't normally get along with them, because I do not like repetition in games. I find it very frustrating unless it's done interestingly.
Really?
Yeah, I find roguelikes really difficult to get into because I'm like, unless it's like a Hades or something that particularly sticks out, I can't, like your Binding of Isaacs and you all that, I can't really get into them. Starting from zero really bothers me. I'm like, I don't want to start from nothing.
If you don't like repetition in games, how do you feel about time loop as a core feature or narrative feature of a game then?
I think when it's done in a certain way in which you don't start from zero. So let's bring up another example. I'm playing Ultros, which is this kind of psychedelic game recently. What I did not know is that it's a time loop game. There are loops and cycles in it, yeah. And in Ultros, when you start a new cycle, very quickly, it's this very psychedelic alien. You play in a cosmic womb. It's very weird.
Oh, okay.
Roguelike, very Metroidvania. You play as this kind of like cyborg character just trying to essentially stop the birth of a new alien god, I think. Don't quote me on that. That's my interpretation.
Ooh, okay.
But yeah, there are cycles in this game, and more importantly, when you restart a cycle, all the skill points you've earned or the stuff you've collected is wiped. You start from zero. You start from the same point every time. So when I first realized that, I was like, we're gonna have a problem here.
Yeah.
We're gonna have a problem here because I do not like that. But the time looping in Ultros is good because it's almost like you start from nothing, but gaming knowledge wise, or my knowledge about the game, I've gained so much from previous loops, which is the fun in roguelikes, right? And I think Ultros does it better because, and get this is wild, there's a gardening mechanic in Ultros that you garden in this game, which I think is the most coolest shit I've played in so long. You basically, each cycle, the stuff you've planted before grows each cycle. And so the platforming elements become more interesting because you can plant seeds, they grow, and the next cycle, things change. And that's why I like the cycle as well, because you're actively leaving a mark on the world that next time makes it easier for you. You're helping yourself in other cycles.
Yeah.
Right?
So
Gardening
cool.
mechanics in this Metroidvania.
And like there's
wild.
Something really intriguing to me as well about the idea of a gardening mechanic in like a time loop, because you would normally think that would be something that would be completely like pointless in but there's like a kind of a history in like other fiction as well. I'm thinking of like one of my favorite books, which is On the Beach by Neville Shute, which is a really wild comparison to draw, but like bear with me. That's about people who are at the end of humanity, who know that they won't be alive this time next year, who still choose to plant gardens. And so like you kind of got gardening as like an act, you know, a kind of act of creation that surpasses your own ability to see the outcome. So that's kind of like my brain drew that connection, and like that's obviously not what's happening here, because it does actually pay off in the next loop. Sorry, what the name of the game? Was it Ultros?
Ultros,
yeah.
Yes. That is so interesting comparison.
Yeah,
it's very much giving that.
It stood out to me just because like it's not like the whole point of the book, but it's one of the things that always stood out to me in the book is this idea of like you know, planting things as like a sort of almost an act of like defiance against the fact that things aren't going to work out for you, which I think has got a lot of relevance in this particular subgenre as well. So yeah,
love that.
That is really interesting. Yeah.
I mean, what you're saying as well, it's like, so I'm playing Outer Wilds at the moment. Friend of the podcast Mick and I are playing Outer Wilds for the first time. It's very much something that you would have expected us to play day one, and somehow 5 years later we've only just started it. And yeah, it's a similar thing where like you keep nothing but knowledge between loops in Outer Wilds, which I found at first, like you say, it's kind of like, it feels frustrating. And okay, there are things that are frustrating in Outer Wilds, like that, like the blooming controls on everything, nightmare. But
yeah,
the ship,
so good.
Oh man, that ship, it's just like we've fallen into the sun so many times. Like, why is that? I shouldn't have fallen into the sun so many times just trying to get around. But yeah, I like it when it's being Heaven's Vault, not so much when it's being Kerbal Space Program, but that's by the by. So the actual time loop at the heart of the issue, which is that like I've come round to the fact that you keep nothing but your knowledge in the end. Because I kept expecting when we first started playing to like, oh, we're going to get a new tool, we're going to get some sort of like new way to affect the environment, but in fact everything that you're ever going to have is available to you almost immediately in that game, which I think is a really interesting way of, you know, drawing out this kind of like 16-hour story, is by being like, you can start anywhere basically and you'll have an equal chance of getting what you need from any particular interaction.
Yeah, Outer Wilds is so great. I've also just started playing it. We started playing around the same time, coincidentally. And I always feel like every time I start a loop, I'm on the edge of something great.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just like, it's always like, because again, I found it very frustrating. I've tried playing Outer Wilds twice before this third attempt, and it's never stuck with me. It's supposed to be like the time loop indie game time loop. Not even just time loop, but like one of the indie games.
Yeah,
right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was picked up some Game of the Year awards in 2019, 2020, right? So it's, you know, a big one for sure.
So yeah, I've tried it twice before, it did not stick. This time I'm like, I'm gonna try. I always got to the 4-hour mark and went, I really don't understand.
There's like a real drop-off point where you're like, oh my god.
Yeah.
But we realised last night how close we must be to the end, and I think
really?
Then you suddenly feel a bit... Honestly, if I'd known how close we were going to get to the end the night before we recorded this, I might have tried to make a bit more time for it a couple of days back. I do not have access to a time loop. I cannot make these choices. So I'm still away from finding out what happens. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely... There are frustrations in that game that I don't think really serve the game, but I do like the story of it a lot. I think it's really got like time looping down. I just don't see why gravity is so stupid. I don't see why that helps anything.
It's like, it's one of those stories as well where it has to be a time loop. You cannot tell this story linearly.
Linearly.
Linearity.
Listener, you try saying this right now out loud.
Is that even a word?
Is it?
Would you say
linearly? Surely is a word.
In a linear way, but
In a linear fashion.
In a linear fashion, thank you. It cannot be told in a linear fashion. It's a story that is designed around the idea of failure and running out of time. That is what this game does the best, is that a lot of these time loops, you start the loop or something triggers the loop. In this one, it's a countdown. It's every, what is it, Rebecca? 20 minutes?
22 minutes, I think.
And with that in mind, that is such a good mechanic to push you to explore, to make you be efficient in your choices, but also that moment where you've just discovered something new and you're quickly trying to translate everything and read it at the same time.
And the music starts playing and then suddenly you're just like speed reading everything that you've just found, because you've always just found like a massive document that will explain everything if you can just get through it. Yeah, that's such a mood. Just
me shouting, no, as the sun engulfs me.
But, like, the music's so nice as well. Like, the end times music is really good. So you're kind of there like, this is nice. But also like, understand everything.
Have you ever thought about playing it, Liam?
Yeah, I did start playing it. And I'm really happy that you've said that you bounced off it, because this has always been like something I felt guilty about. Because you hear people mention this all the time on My Perfect Console, Simon Parkin's podcast. And you get these, like, you know, really intelligent people, and they're like, well, Outer Wilds is the game that changed my life and it made me cry. And I'm like, my experience of Outer Wilds is I played it on PS4 and the input lag was so severe that I genuinely think, and if you Google it, I think the PlayStation version is like not the recommended way of playing it because it makes it harder to play.
Shit.
And everyone's like, you got to play this on PC. So I'm waiting for it to come down in price on Steam. So I can.
Is it on sale at the moment? I think it might be on sale at the moment because I got a notification.
Is it on sale at the moment? Hold on, listener. This is more important than this podcast. I need to check this immediately.
40% off.
Oh, it is. It's only
$11.99.
So we've got the Xbox One version, which is we're running up against like the last gen like friction of how long things take to load and stuff now that we're used to PS5. And just also the fact that, like, it doesn't feel as at home on console as maybe it could. But
yeah, fair.
You know, but it's like, it is still, like I say, I like the story a lot. I don't see how the mechanical frustrations really add to it. I mean, I see how some of the, you know, I understand how the loop is really essential. Like, that's great. But also it's like, my ship just requires so much babying. I don't want to have to like, babysit this damn ship.
I do quite like that. I like my hunk of wooden.
Yeah, it is quite cute.
I liked it.
It's quite cute until it once again just decides that like it's gonna be affected by the gravity of something over there, and you're like, oh, piss off.
Yes, it crashes full force into the brittle hollow or something, and then you're just like, well, I'm not going to be flying anytime soon, so I might as well explore this planet.
Yeah, exactly. We have started doing that where we just do like the most elaborate. It's like, you know what? Any landing you walk away from is a good one because we're only here for 20 minutes. So let's.
Any landing you walk away from is a good one. I like that.
I'm sure I've heard that as an actual like thing pilots say.
It's probably how I feel every time I'm on a plane.
Yeah, fair.
I think Outer Wilds is like the peak example of the most common way that time loop games function, right? In that it's all about your knowledge and learning the solution, even though the solution is there from the start. But the joy of it is just getting glimpses and putting those pieces together within a short time frame, right? Like,
yes.
I'm thinking about things like The Forgotten City, you know, probably another huge indie game about time loops, which I should think you've both played?
Yes.
I haven't played it.
Have you not played? It feels like Rebecca
on my list
bit,
of
like
things.
100%.
It almost certainly is, but there's just a shocking number of games on this list. This is only the list of time loop games. This is huge. Yeah, no, it's definitely on my radar.
It functions the same in the sense that you play as someone who ends up falling down this cavern into this underground. You find the ruins of an underground city. You like transport back to ancient Rome, and then when you're back in ancient Rome, the city is populated but only sparsely, and you learn that not only can you not escape, but there is this concept of the golden rule that if anyone commits a sin, they will be transformed into golden statues immediately. But you don't know what the rules are. You don't know what counts as a sin. Obviously, everyone in the city who comes from very different cultures and different areas have different ideas of what the sin is. And it's just about trying to work out how you're going to escape and maybe save some people and try and solve the mystery at the heart of this city. And the time loop aspect is that you have to run all the way back across the map to get back to the time portal to loop the day again.
Yeet yourself
in.
Just like...
Which is kind of an interesting twist, I guess, that in most games you have no control over the time loop, but in The Forgotten City, the time loop is your escape hatch. Like, you have the option, but you can miss you can die. You know, you can suffer at the consequences.
Get stabbed.
Get stabbed, yep, or many different ways.
Fall off a cliff.
Yes, succumb to the janky Skyrim-like controls.
Did it start life as a Skyrim mod? Is that the one I'm thinking of? Right,
yeah,
I
in
thought
2015,
so.
by Nick Pierce, I've written here. It was set within the lore of Skyrim as well. It was not like a Roman city in Skyrim. It was a dwarven city, I think, and it's very different. Yeah, you can still play that version,
nice.
I think, and it's meant to be worth playing if you like the full game. But yeah, this idea that maybe the best thing about time loop games is that it's all about your knowledge and how you gain that knowledge and then how you use it, how you can fix things, and being given those second, third, fourth chances based on what you find out, and being able to potentially save people who might die and things like that. I understand though that Outer Wilds is more cosmic and is more about the nature of the universe and existence in general, but that's what's nice about it, right? Is that it has such a you can talk about so many things within that simple format.
Because it's like with a lot of looping games, your knowledge is of the game and its mechanics, but I think with the Forgotten City, it's like it's a mystery game. So you just remember evidence and how things connect, and like literally what Liam, you said about like connecting the pieces, like that is so literal in the Forgotten City, because if you're into mystery games where, I don't know, you like to write things down and retain information and the game doesn't just give it all to you in like a menu, this is a perfect example of that, because the looping, it gives you more information, and your spider web of, well, this person went here and this person did that, and it gets bigger and bigger, and it helps you retain information if given to you in small doses, like looping. Like there's not just one continuous train of, oh shit, now this happening, this happening, this happening. You can loop, and with in short loops, you can kind of retain this information. Yeah, that game is so good. It goes some places as well that I just never expected. I think when you start going like beneath the city, and I won't say any more, it goes fucking bonkers, and it's quite similar to Outer Wilds in that way. This kind of cosmic. Try not to. I'm dancing. I'm dancing around the.
I'll just raise my eyebrows gently at that, but yes, it's.
I did realize that one of the potential pitfalls of this topic is that some games about time loops don't tell you that it's a time loop until quite a way in, which renders it a bit of a spoiler to even mention them in the context of the conversation.
Oh, really?
Right? Yeah, I mean, I think that there's,
I can. While you talk, which one did you have in mind? I can bleep it.
Well, I was thinking specifically about Heaven's Vault, which I mentioned a minute ago.
Oh,
because
really?
It's not until the sort of very end of shall I say again? You're gonna have to keep bleeping me. I think we should talk about it because I think it's worth. I don't think it's like that big of a spoiler. I'm going to try and talk around the details, but like the idea that you are seeing a time loop situation from within one of the loops, and that's kind of all you see is like an interesting kind of take on and subversion of the whole setup. I just think Heaven's Vault, because I've been playing Outer Worlds, Heaven's Vault pairs really well with it as well, so it's kind of been on my mind a lot lately. But there is that suggestion within Heaven's Vault that you are seeing things that have happened before, that the robots around you can remember times that this has happened before, but you can't because you're playing as a human.
Yes, because a lot of characters is like, oh, it's my first time in the loop.
Yeah.
With that character, it's like you find out that it's all happened before. Yes. Right?
Oh,
that is so
that
cool.
is cool.
Are there any other games that do that? What?
I feel like there's other like examples I can think of. Another one was Layers of Fear, which I think technically sort of counts, because the most common ending to get for Layers of Fear on your first playthrough is the one where you leap back to the start of the game.
Yes, I got that ending.
Yeah, I've never got that one. I've played it, both the original and the remaster, and I always get one of the definitive endings first. I don't know why I'm decisive in Layers of Fear.
Hell yeah, you're just
everything
that good.
Else in my life I'm so indecisive, but in Layers of Fear I know how to get like out of this situation.
She knows what she wants.
Literally, the trophy is called I Know What I Want, I think, isn't it? Like,
is it?
So.
I did not think of that as a time looping game, but it most definitely is, because I mean that's about mental illness as well,
Yeah.
right? Like there's something in this artist of repetition as a both coping mechanism, the routine, and the I know Rebecca's really into these games, so I'm trying to be
that's
like,
cool. Like, I have bounced off the remaster lately, so I'm still into it. But you can
oh,
you can
really?
say what you. I mean, you can always say what you want. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna flip out.
But it's like I don't want to be wrong. But my
I see what you
interpretation
mean.
was,
Yeah.
No, I love Layers of Fear. The first, I didn't get along with the second one, but the first one I really loved because it's kind of like this idea of an artist. The game is about an artist. He is painting a portrait, and it just goes through this haunted house of different rooms and different memories that he's experiencing. But the loop is he always ends up back at his easel with a painting that is the layers of the painting are coming through as you loop each time. Layers of fear, layers to the painting. So that's the idea. And it's this idea that this looping is him revisiting memories, but also this routine and this obsession that the many days he's had working on this painting is slowly unraveling and dissolving as his life dissolves around him because of his obsession with his art. And that's very like metaphor, like super metaphor, like the idea of looping as going through the same day over and over again.
Relatable. But I think it's an interesting one, right? Because
we'll get into that.
The way it's presented is initially not as like a time loop, right? It's about the idea of like it's much more grounded in your house becoming strange around you. It's like very PT inspired. It's got like PT. Is that surely counts as well? Oh my god, I didn't even think of PT. Hang on, I've got to add something to my notes.
Never played it, too scared.
But it's interesting, like, I guess that comes back to this Hades idea, right? Of where loops and time loops are functionally the same within the context of games. You know, PT is a loop. And I guess it's a time loop in the sense that, but maybe you time skip. You almost time travel in that game, based on what I understand about the lore of the, you know, the murder and that. You know, but that's the thing, right? It's like you can play with that concept of what a loop means, especially in the horror genre, right?
Yes.
So easily. And I think by the nature of PT being so not understandable, and that's what I love about PT, the fact that we never saw what that game was going to be. It will forever be this cursed object with no explanation.
I think that was always the game, personally. I don't think it was ever going to follow on.
Well, there's that trailer of what the game was.
Yeah, there was a trailer that kind of accompanied it, which
minutes.
Suggested like, oh man, we could get so into into Silent Hill lore. But
I mean, I think that game benefited from never having more to it. To be honest, I think it will retain in people's mind because of that.
Indeed.
But yeah, that's the thing, right? Like looping is just such a. I don't know what my point was. I'm so tired. I'm sorry.
It's okay. No, we go a little loopy when we talk about loops, and we just kind of like it kind of dead ends sometimes when you're thinking about it, because it is such a mind screw to try and hold it all in your head.
Oh, I was gonna say, yeah, you can't separate the idea of, like, sometimes it's like the crossover is so tight, right, between this idea of constant looping and time loops. Like a game doesn't have to explicitly say this is a time loop for it to feel like a time loop game. Like I would say, hands down, my favorite time loop game isn't about time loops, it's Hitman. I think Hitman is the, you know, best example of repeat the same thing every single day. NPCs will follow set routines, but you are let loose in the same way that Bill Murray is in Groundhog Day, consequence free.
Like a Clockwork World almost.
Exactly, yes. Everything plays out exactly the same until you influence it. But it's not about time loops, right? But
yeah. I can't not at this point mention Deathloop, just because I really want to say Deathloop at some point in this episode, because I really like
Yes, absolutely. Yes. You have to mention Deathloop.
It's gotta be said. Obviously as a big Arcane fan, was very into that. And it is I mean, obviously it's a Hitman game in a time loop. It's pretty much like that's what it's doing, and it has the very I just love the way it's got the 4 districts and the 4 time zones, and you've just got to like work out how to influence things to make sure that everything lines up for this clear shot through to the only possible end game. Because I remember people like being quite annoyed when they realized that Deathloop is like a solved game. There is a solution that you need to find. But I actually really like that about it. I like that there is, you know, that it's a puzzle, and that there is a single, it's like, you know, algebra or something. You need to like find all the variables and put them in the right line, and then you will find the solution. And I kind of love that. And again, that's probably coming back to Outer Wilds as well, is that it's constructed very similarly. It's like you're not kind of bumbling through to find a way, although that can be fun as well in these games, but it's like you are finding the one possible way that your character can escape the loop, essentially, which is, you know, a really good way to bring a game like this to a close. Because another thing that I observed while making this long list of time loop games for today's episode is that I have hardly finished any of these. I am mid-loop in so many time loop games that I have an interest in.
Appropriate and interesting,
actually quite nightmarish.
That's funny.
Dear.
Sorry, but just to go back to Hitman very quickly, because I've not played Deathloop, unfortunately, but I'm sure the points will be the same. I just think that's really astute, because it's like you start with point A and then you need to end at point B, but the route to get there is like totally and utterly down to you.
Absolutely.
Like a Rubik's Cube almost. You start with something, but there's a million different ways to solve it.
Yeah.
And that is so interesting. I honestly wouldn't have thought of Hitman in that way, but that is so true.
But it encourages loops, right?
Damn.
Like, that's what was beautiful about the World of Assassination trilogy, is I all realised that people were playing those levels repeatedly to see how they could push the boundaries and find little secrets and optimize it in interesting ways. So they just built the game around that playstyle. And they said, okay, you know, back in 2015, so World of Assassination, they released it episodically. That was Square Enix's big thing in like 2015. So the first episode of Hitman World of Assassination was just Paris. You just got one level, and at the time people were like, what, just one level? That's ridiculous. But then when I played it, that's when I came to this realization of it being all about the loop. Is I spent 30 hours in Paris alone because there was just so many little things to do. Like you say, it was a clockwork environment. Everyone followed these same paths. People went to these places at certain times, and you could, you know, drop a bomb in the toilet and know that at certain points you based on sound cues. And that's a time loop, right? That's no different to something like, I was thinking of the Sexy Brutale, which I really like.
Yes.
You know, the Sexy Brutale is just Hitman in reverse.
One of the many that I own a little way into.
Oh, it's so good. I love that game. But, you know, that is just the opposite. That is a game about murders happening and you trying to prevent them in a loop environment. And yeah, I love that. I love that idea of, like you say, you have this large world. And that's all Deathloop did, right? All, like you say, Deathloop just put a time loop mechanic over Hitman.
Yeah, or, you know, Dishonored, which is in series with Dishonored. It's just time loop Dishonored. And yeah.
Yes, absolutely. They just acknowledged that this is a loop, and let's just make that part of the story so the characters are aware of it too. And that's why I really like Deathloop as well. So
and it's got that interesting. I think one of the things that I find intriguing is the kind of agreed upon rule that in most time loop stories you'll have a character or a small group of characters who are aware that of the loop, and that also, I think, puts you in a really interesting position as the player, because you kind of start with the same knowledge base as your character, which is a rare position to be in a video game. Is to kind of like, you start, I'm thinking Deathloop particularly because your protagonist starts with no special memories other than what's going on, but I think it kind of holds true for most games of this type, where it's like the relevant information that you have as the player and the relevant information that the character has about the situation they face is the same, because you tend to start in the first loop, and then it's a rare case where the player character and the player can be in lockstep through all the information gathering, because you assume a certain knowledge of like a world and a setting, the situation for a player character, but it's just not true when they, you know, just have just this minute realize that they're stuck in a 20-minute time loop or whatever, and that becomes like far more relevant. And I think that's one of the reasons it's so popular as a theme in video games, is because it allows that like level of immersion in the protagonist's perspective, maybe.
That's a really, really good point. I've never thought of it like that before, but yeah, you're totally right.
Agent 47, is that the number?
Yeah.
If he realised he was stuck in a time loop, that'd be funny. I don't think he would care.
No, I don't think he would
he's
either.
A stone cold bastard. He'd be like, okay.
I would love it if I feel like IO might do it, where they would just be like, yeah, he just turns to, like, looks you dead in the eye through the camera and is like, yes, I know that we've been here
And you all along.
2,500 times. Yeah, he'd just do it.
Let me die.
He would just roll with it, wouldn't he?
He really would.
You'd be like, okay.
Oh, that's reminding me actually of another one that I wanted to bring up quickly, because we were talking about like the protagonist perspective and protagonists in time loop games beginning with like no context along with the player. Another one to mention would be Slay the Princess, which was the horror visual novel that I played near the end of last year, which is the same thing. You start as your protagonist more or less gains consciousness for the first time. And it has the same thing. It's like you're looping through, you're trying different paths. The game has like quite a nice, I'm going to say this for Slay the Princess versus something like Outer Wilds, is that it's gently pushing you away from paths you've already followed with such a gentle pressure that you don't really notice it happening unless you're looking for it. Mm-hmm. But it has a similar thing. It was like, we're going to go through X many loops, but every time, the only thing the protagonist knows about himself is that he is in a time loop. Everything else is a blank to him, which I think is just like a really pure version of that trope.
Again, with like Slay the Princess as well, that's another one that I found really engaging, because you take different voices with you as you go through each loop, which is really smart. So you start off with minimal inner monologue. You have a narrator who's sassy as fuck, and we'll get into narrators in a bit, because there's a very big game we probably should touch upon as well with an unreliable narrator.
I think I know what we're talking about.
So, but as you decide different choices and go down different paths, you develop certain personality voices. And so when you loop back, you suddenly have a very Disco Elysium style, fully voice acted thought person whispering in your ear and making decisions. And so when you've looped several times and you've garnered this gang of gaggling fucking inner voices monologues, it becomes really interesting as they start talking to each other and start telling you what to do, and you're talking back and you don't know what to do. And I think that's so interesting. Like, the loop is the same, but you as a person inherently have changed, and it's reflected in these experiences, which are summed up through. And Rebecca, what are the personality traits again? They're named like really weird,
I'm just
horrible things.
Giggling the whole time because I'm just remembering the voice of the smitten, who is so funny.
Oh yeah, like the smitten, who I guess
is the
really smitten,
who just loves the princess, and whatever she does is wonderful, and like it doesn't matter if she kills everyone or if she kills you. It's just, she's great.
Oh, she's lovely. Oh, we can fix her.
It's
like no.
So you start with
we cannot.
You start with the voice of the hero. You start with just the voice of the hero, and then like I think through the next 4 loops or 6 loops or something, you gain like a new voice every time. And there's like the smitten, there's the hunted. That's the one who's really paranoid.
The paranoid one, it sends me into fight off, like, honestly.
Man,
but it's like
so
if you get really horribly killed, right? If you get horribly killed, then every time he's like, no, we're gonna get horribly killed again. I don't want that to happen.
We gotta get out of here. Yeah. We gotta go, girl.
It's like,
and I'm like, maybe, but also I need to get this achievement, and I need to get this. So we need to not.
He'll just be there like,
leave.
Dying hurts. Dying infinitely in a time loop sucks every time, so we should just leave. We should just get out of here. And it's like,
What's the one that's really anxious and keeps repeating your internal organs to try and stay calm? That is honestly so
I'm gonna
horrifying.
Have to
it's like the stomach, the brain. It's like the stomach, the tongue, the brain, the stomach, and he keeps repeating it as a chant.
Oh, I hate that.
Yeah, I
really hate that.
Yeah, it's honestly, and then the others are like, oh, let him chant, let him do his thing.
Oh, so
and
they talk to each other.
Calm. Yes.
So they're all in conversation.
So they talk to each other and they can hear each other. They're in conversation. And there's one moment where this certain voice, while Rebecca looks at it real quick, gets really anxious and starts chanting like this specific order of like parts of your body. And they're like chatting over them as this like he keeps chanting. It's really weird.
That, I mean,
I was like, this fucking game.
That's incredible. I haven't played this yet. But
yeah, that's the paranoid as well.
The paranoid.
It's the paranoid. God, that fucking
tracks.
Piece of shit.
Heart, lungs, liver, nerves. Heart, lungs, liver, nerves.
That's it. Hearts, lung, liver, nerves. Fucking hell.
The hero, and then there's 10 additional voices that you get based on which paths you've taken. So you've got the broken, the cheated, the cold, the contrarian, the hunted, the opportunist, the paranoid, the skeptic, the smitten, and the stubborn.
What's the most you can have? I think I had 4 at one time.
Yeah, I think because you do 5 loops, right? One playthrough is 5 loops, so you get your basic man, you get the hero, and then you get 4 more, I think. So
4 others.
that would make sense. The Stubborn's a good one as well. I like the Stubborn. He's
Gets
just like,
crowded.
we're just going to go back in there, and this time we're going to win. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
Creepy.
I really love the idea of what's the best way of handling a time loop in a visual novel. Keep introducing more narrators.
Yeah.
Is
Yes.
a really smart way of making that game stand out. So, fair play to the developers of Slay the Princess. That is incredible. I need to play this game. I'm terrified too, but I need to play it.
It's so good.
It is
you
quite
will,
scary.
You will like it. I think you'll like it.
Yeah.
The drawings are so detailed and like
They're messed
so
up, aren't
visceral.
they?
Like,
Yes.
Before we
There's
move
some
on,
fucked up shit.
I loved how the developers of that game and the developer of El Paso Elsewhere did a bundle called the We Can
Yeah,
Fix
I
Her
saw
bundle.
that.
Wait, what was the bundle called?
It was called We Can Fix Her.
Oh. Oh.
Yep.
That's
Oh,
iconic.
dear.
That is really good. Okay, but like, very quickly, did you see what Deconstructing did recently?
Yeah,
The
I
PR
was
thing
wondering
they
if we were going to talk about this. Do you know what? Every other person in my life has spoken to me about this, apart from you two. And I
What's
thought that was
this?
really interesting. It's amazing that you don't even know about it. It's gotten like, it's hit like parts of my friend group that I did not expect to. Would you
Yeah.
like to explain this, Rachel, on me?
I mean, Deconstructing basically released a piece of merch that they were like, people have been asking for this forever. So, there's a god.
Oh, no, I
They
do
released
know,
basically
I did
a-
know about this.
Oh, you
yeah,
do know
it.
yeah,
Right,
yeah,
okay, yeah.
I did know. I just...
Which looks so detailed.
Yeah.
So, like,
Yeah, oh my goodness. Well, we had a news story about it on VG247, which resulted in some like interesting decision to have the header image, but almost exclusively pixelated. So,
oh, that's funnier though.
Yeah, it was quite funny, to be fair.
That's really funny. But
yeah.
oh, sorry, just speaking about that was unbelievable. They are wild.
Yeah, that was just
They
like
are absolutely
when they were like,
nuts.
oh, what was it? It was like, oh, we heard you wanted to romance the god. We're not
Yeah.
going to update the game, but we are going to make that possible.
We're
So I
going to
think
let you do it, yeah.
Yeah. Oh my
Oh.
goodness. Oh my
It's
goodness.
a
Yeah.
fascinating, this is slightly off topic, but I think there's probably like an interesting article to be written about how the Cult of the Lamb developers or the social media manager saying that if we get X amount of followers, we'll add sex to the game, and how that's like influenced like indie marketing strategies over the last 6 months.
Yeah.
I don't think without that tweet from the developers of that game, we get the Bad Dragon collaboration for Cosmic Wheel Sisterhood. Like, it's,
Yes.
yeah, what? I'd love to examine that. I think it's fascinating.
Yes, it is so interesting. People be thirsty.
Yeah, they really do.
People.
The pandemic
be thirsty.
really
Oh.
brought that like subset of Tumblr users
To
into the
the
surface,
surface?
and then all of us were just so horny during lockdown. Hades just like
I know.
increased that tenfold, and now we're here.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like I remember, this is so by the by, I just remember a really early conversation in our friendship, Liam, where we were saying like, I don't think anyone came out of Resident Evil 3 remake with the same sexual orientation they went in
No,
with.
absolutely
It's
not.
just like,
Absolutely
oh,
not.
that Carlos redesign changed everyone I know
Ugh.
in like a very fundamental way.
Yeah, it broke me. Just drinking a very large, maybe my third or fourth glass of Aperol Spritz in the garden, and I was like, wait a minute. Well, speaking of Slay the Princess, I know, Rebecca, you just alluded to another game with an unreliable narrator that has shades of loops, if not time loops, and I assume that we're going to talk about Stanley Parable.
No. Yes.
Oh, shit. Oh, shit.
Could you imagine?
We're talking about
Never.
Bastion.
We're talking about Braid. Unreliable character. It fits.
Oh, unreliable creator. Yeah, so Stanley Parable. Oh, I think we've lost Rebecca.
No! One mention of Jonathan
That's
Blow.
it.
and he
She's
fucks
dropped off the
it.
call the second she heard about Braid.
Yeah, hello, sorry.
Hello.
Yes, I was just at the point of being like, okay, it's really fucked, I'm gonna send a message, and it came back. So
Hello. You missed. We
yeah.
were just talking about Braid.
yeah, I understood. When I walked back in, I immediately knew what we were talking about.
I guess it's a game about time manipulation, but never mind. I wish
Do
you all
not.
the best.
Do
so
not.
Yeah, fuck it.
Yeah, Stanley Parable, a game about loops.
Yay!
Maybe one of the first, definitely the first indie game I played that had looping as a central mechanic. And yeah, also very heavily relies on that core concept of looping to challenge you about the nature of games and your relationship with them. And, you know, do you always go the guided path, or do you try and push the boundaries and challenge what the creator is trying to make for you? And yeah, Stanley Parable, if you don't know it, I'm sure many people do. You play as a man named Stanley who works in a very, very boring office, and one day he decides to get up off his desk and walk around the office, but no one's there, and a narrator guides the player, but you can choose to go through the right door instead of the left door. And the whole game is about trying to find all the different permutations of this story. Yeah, not a time loop, but I would still think it's worth talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's time loopy enough that it gets put on lists of games about time loops.
I think it's 100% a time loop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The narrator at one point understands that they are caught in it. And I think in Stanley Parable 2, it expands upon it a bit more.
Yeah,
I'm
Ultra
pretty
Deluxe
sure.
definitely plays with that idea of it being a time loop in one of its loops, which is quite headfucky to think about. But yeah.
Yes.
For Ultra Deluxe is so good. I hear no one really talk about it, but it
It
elevates
is
that
so
game.
good.
It's so, like, I already love that game, but there's some parts of that where you're just, like, in stunned
Oh, yeah,
silence.
it is Ultra Deluxe. It's not 2.
Well, it's...
Right? That's the
sort
whole
of is,
point.
right?
But, like, in the game, they joke about what, like, a sequel will look like.
I
and
love
it's
that
so
so
fucking
much.
funny.
Those two
Oh
are
my
so
god, the
funny.
bit where they put reviewers' quotes in
Just
the
the full
game.
articles of the reviews. Oh, that bit is so... Yeah, there's a bit where the
Yep.
narrator talks about the first game. It goes so meta, and the narrator talks about the reception to the first game at the time in 2013 or whatever, and then it just has these screenshots of like GameSpot and
Yeah.
I think Stephanie
And
Sterling.
it has actual Steam reviews as well, doesn't
Oh,
it?
it does. It has loads of Steam
I was like,
reviews.
I'm sure it has Steam reviews.
Yeah, they start off with critics, and the narrator's like, "Well, we don't care about critics. We should go to the players, the fans," and they're all like legit, like really horrible Steam reviews, and it's just like, oh my god, it's very good.
Yeah, I think that Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe might be the most meta game that I've ever encountered.
Yeah, same.
Like at the point
It's definitely
where
up
you're
there, yeah.
individually responding to negative Steam reviews within your game update is pretty wild.
Oh, what a game! I love
And
that
yeah,
so
as we
much.
said as well, the idea of a working life where every day can feel very, very monotonous,
Mhm.
being like a time loop playing out as well. I assume that's what we were kind of alluding to earlier as well when we talked about that within the context of like Layers of Fear and the idea of like this task that you return to every day and every day and every day.
Yeah, and I think for me, why the Stanley Parable hits so hard is that there are certain conventions in games that we just understand as players,
Mhm.
and when a game actively subverts them, I feel personally attacked.
Yeah, same.
I'm just like,
Yeah.
I'm like shook. I'm
Yeah.
like, excuse me? Don't call me out mid-game. How dare you? Like, it's just like, it's kind of the same with In Stars and Time. Like, I actively feel like the game is gaslighting me at times. Like, the Stanley Parable is such a gaslighty game.
I know exactly what you mean because I was just thinking about it in terms of like, we kind of all remember the first time we played BioShock, and you get to
Yeah.
that point where the game's like, you did exactly what I told you to, you sucker, and it's like, but you didn't have a choice.
No.
And like, I love BioShock, but that you didn't have a choice. But in the Stanley Parable, you have a choice. You have the choice to obey or resist. But even when you resist, it's like the game's like, I knew you were going to do that.
Yeah.
That's why I said to do one thing because I knew you were going to do the other. And it's like, it does
It's like,
exactly the
I
feeling of being
trusted
like,
you.
low-key gaslit.
Yeah.
But
How
even if
dare
you go against him, he's like, he'll be like, Stanley goes through the door on the right and you go through the door on the left, but that's not really like, that isn't truly breaking out of the loop, right? Because
No.
you just doing the opposite in two choices of the thing you're told it's like a false, obviously it's all a comment on video game design, and so it's a false choice, and that's like the point. But yeah, the relationship with that narrator by the end of any given loop of Stanley Parable.
Oh,
If I had to get into a fist fight with any video game character, I'd totally fight the narrator. I swear
Would
to
you?
God. Yeah, I'd
Maybe
win
we
as
should
well.
make that an episode.
He's just a voice. I'd
You would
throttle him.
win. Yeah. Yeah.
I sort of feel like I just oddly cry as I held him. I just feel like you go on such an adventure with that narrator, and
Materialize, and I'll slap you. And that's how I'm just gonna absolutely fight you. Not as Stanley though.
Oh my goodness.
Stanley is a
Stanley.
wet blanket, bless him. But is he? Because we play as him, and he's in the
Well, yeah.
system. And,
you have no choice to be
Yeah.
subservient, even within the illusion of choice, right? Like that's.
Stop that! Stop that, you. Hello, philosophy.
I love that game so much. I think it's brilliant.
And even when you realise that, and even when you're like, I'm just not going to play this anymore, it gives you an achievement if you don't play for 5 years.
Yep.
So
Oh yeah.
maddening.
We need to talk about
Yeah.
Beginner's Guide at some point as well, because I'd love an excuse to revisit that. Yeah.
I was gonna say, you're talking about like the nature of like games commenting on games. I think the Beginner's Guide, like the Stanley Parable, I was like, I'm gonna fight the narrator. I wanted to hug what's the developer
Davey
in the
Radin.
Beginner's Guide. Yeah, I want to give them a hug and be like, it's okay.
Did you?
Is it?
Interesting.
Well, is it Coda?
Coda is the
Yeah.
game. Oh yeah, sorry. Coda is the developer. Davey is the narrator.
Yeah, so not Davey.
Oh yeah, Coda. Yeah,
'Cause that's his
definitely, yeah.
name. Because didn't he work on that? No, he didn't work on Stanley Parable. What else they just seem like really similar games.
But yeah,
else did
Davey
he work
Radin was
on?
one of the creators of Stanley Parable, and he
Oh!
plays himself in Beginner's Guide. So the whole idea of it is that it's meant to be Davey Radin presenting you this game, and
Yes.
fuck, I love Beginner's Guide so much. Off
Yeah,
topic, but
I would love to talk about it.
we will come back to that definitely. I think that'll be a really, because it's
Nice.
been like over a decade since that came out now. So yeah, we should definitely revisit that. Yeah. Oh, what a game. Anyway, yes, time loops. Wow. I think the one remaining avenue that I would like to not even explore, just to listen to probably you two talk about, because I feel like you two might have more to say about it, is this more modern idea of that a lot of us sort of did live through a time loop as a result of the pandemic, and how every day did feel a little bit like we were doing the same thing ad nauseum. And now we're starting to see a new school of developers bringing out games that examine that idea, sometimes with the concept of like eternal banishment, like with Cosmic Wheel, or with time loops, which I think things like in Stars in Time, is that maybe a
Yes.
nodding.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah,
Absolutely a pandemic game, post-pandemic game.
it's
Coin of the
interesting
term.
that an active, well, no, I think that is a thing though, right? I think the post-pandemic game is a thing, and they lend themselves so well to time loop, because I mean, how many of us watched Groundhog Day within the first few months of the pandemic? I know I did, and I pointed lazily at the screen and went, it's just like that, innit? Being in the house all the time. So
Babes, I did not.
okay, just me then.
No. Oh my God.
Yeah, I got to admit, I didn't either. But
Why would you do that?
Oh, we went like real deep. Last of Us Part 2, Shaun of the Dead, any zombie film, time
Oh
loop
my
movies.
God.
Yeah, I don't know why we did it. Cathartic to some degree, maybe? I don't know.
to be fair, I did kind of a similar thing. I watched
Oh, really?
oh, what's that movie? Is it Contagion?
Oh,
Oh
yeah.
my
It's,
God, you both.
And I read Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel
You
for the first time.
read
my
Station
God.
11 during the pandemic?
Yeah, it was like a recommended. It was like 99p on Kindle, and it was a recommendation from somewhere. They were like, actually, this is a really good, and like so many people did that she wrote a follow-up novel based on her experiences of having written a book about
What?
pandemics that got huge during a pandemic.
Damn. Oh
Did-
my God.
So I read Station 11. Sorry, listener, this is a big leap. But I read Station 11 in like 2015, 2014.
Right.
So when the pandemic
Yeah.
was like, when we were starting to hear about it, I was like shitting myself, because I worked with a bunch of virologists at the time who were like, this is
Of
going to be
course,
bad.
Yeah.
In like January, first week, they were like, oh, be careful. This is going to be really
Oh my
bad.
God.
And then I'd
Oh my
also
God.
read Station 11, so I was just panicking. So during the pandemic, when people were like, oh, have you read like Station 11? I was like, do not talk to me about Station 11.
Oh no.
Wait, what is Station 11?
Oh, it's incredible. I'll let Rebecca explain it.
If you like sort of like Jeff Vandermeer stuff, I feel like it's kind of on the same wavelength. So Station 11 is about a super flu, basically, that takes out a lot of humanity, but it's more about the rebuilding afterwards. It's about like kind of like in the way that The Walking Dead focuses on like survivor communities and that sort of thing. So it's the idea that there are these pockets of people who manage to, there's not like really any immunity so much that people just manage to avoid infection and wait for the infection to die out. But then there is like the consequence of, how you rebuild humanity from the base of just like one of the main settings is an airport, and they just manage to seal off this airport, and everyone inside that airport, then those are the only, they're just, none of them lived there. They were just happened to be in this airport on the day when this all kicked off, and they're all obviously quite far from home. And it's like, do you build new families? Do you like make this your new home? Is this, it's so good. I really love it.
Yeah, it's a beautiful book.
And yeah, it's sort of a loose trilogy with another book that she wrote called The Glass Hotel, and then it all comes together in Sea of Tranquility, which is again a bit of a meta novel about the fact that she wrote
oh my god,
Station 11 years before the pandemic, and then obviously when it really took off again during the pandemic, and she was getting all these questions asked about it, and she was like, but I'm living through this too, and it's kind of weird to always be like treated like someone who's an authority, where I just wrote a speculative novel that ended up kind of happening 5 years later. And yeah, it's all, I'm a big fan of her books.
I will read it.
Emily St. John Mandel, definitely recommend.
Also 300 pages. We're good.
Oh yeah, it's a breezy read. I read it in like 2 days. It's yeah,
it's good.
Rebecca, can you send me the order I should read those books in, please?
I'm going to put it in the general chat.
Is that all right? Thank you. Appreciate you. Because you've said this to me before, and I've never read them in that order, but I keep seeing them. I'm like, I need to talk to Rebecca about this, so seizing the opportunity. But yes, post-pandemic time loops. What do we think about that? Wow, that was a visceral noise.
Well, it's like, what's interesting about them is that none of them came out during the pandemic. So like you go through this event and suddenly all these artists come out with like scenarios in which their characters in some way, or even just like people, like groups of like teams of developers who've just been like, end of the world. That's what our game's about. It's just the end of the world. And it's just a bit like, we all went through this like literally traumatic, horrible thing, and now everything seems to relate to that, which is so interesting. But also like, I've never played a set of video games in a row in which have actively hurt me. Like, in the feels, like a gut punch every single time. I'm just like, oh, a nice game about witches and choice. I'll play that. Oh, my heart. Ooh, a game about a bunch of dinosaurs, and it's like, it's the end of the world. Oh, my heart. Like, never, like, game after game after game. It was like, there's like different people putting everything into their art and what they experienced, and like seeing that is just so interesting. And yeah, a big part of that was time loops. This is like a random question.
Yeah.
Given the subject matter of this podcast, maybe we shouldn't linger on it, but it's just made me wonder, because like one of the reasons that I think we're seeing that in the indie space so much is because the production cycle for indie games can be shorter, right? Like a lot of the games that we're seeing, like Goodbye Volcano High, like Cosmic Will Sisterhood, like Mediterranean Inferno was another one that I know you mentioned, and Full Void was one that I played last year.
Oh yeah.
They have this short production cycle, which means that they were spinning up in like 2020, 2021 when the pandemic was at its height. And like, I wonder if, given the whole state of the industry, if in another couple of years we're going to start seeing like the AAA takes on the pandemic, or are they just not going to do, because it's not like where the money is? And like, obviously you've got, AA is a different question, but I would be intrigued to see what a AAA post-pandemic game looked like if they decided not to go the route of like live service and, $60 battle pass and all of that. If they actually did something with a big AAA setting that like did the same thing, but I don't know if it's possible.
A contagion has taken over the world. Humans are forced underground. It's just like, and there's robots and explosions. It's like, the cycle of violence. Humanity.
Yeah, I wonder, because like there's got to be a way to do it. There's got to be a way to do it well.
It won't be
with that kind of budget, but I don't have the faith that it would be done well in the current.
If we can look at something like, oh god, don't even.
Which
I'm so fucking excited for, but I'm side-eyeing massively. Like, there are two wolves inside me.
Both of them are howling so loud. I don't think we'll see an explicit post-pandemic game from a company like Ubisoft, but I think we will see like the same way that there are definitely post 9/11 and like Iraq war games, like because even I think I mentioned this on the podcast last episode, but we're playing GTA 5 at the moment and sort of just like observing it with 10 years of distance. It feels like a game from a different era. Like it's pre-2016 election, it's pre-pandemic, it's very much still like the war, you know, in the Middle East. It's very like the stereotypes it has and things like that are so of the time that it's very apparent 10 years later. I sort of feel like we'll start to see games coming out that are, that I don't know, more like reflections of the overall time rather than something explicitly like this is a game about, let's face it, probably a man and his son in a time loop, and the son points out puzzles to you as you're given, you know, open world mission design or whatever.
Lots of I don't want to trigger anyone, yellow paint.
Oh my goodness.
Can I just say, no, I'm not getting into it. As a UX designer, I have so many, like, be a UX designer for a week and then put a fucking tweet out about guiding people to do what you need them to do, all right? Anyway, let's move on.
Pop off!
Right. Also, like today for work, I was playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla again, and I was like, red paint. Why is it fine when it's red paint?
It's fine when it's red paint. Yeah, red barrels.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's white paint, like in God of War.
Do you know how expensive games are? Do you know how much they want you to reach the end of that game? I'm surprised everything isn't in yellow paint.
And like, do you know what the bounce rate is on an average AAA title as well? It's right, about 25% of players get to the end of your average AAA game. So, you know, you actually want people to buy the sequel, which means that you want them to reach the end. Anyway, it's so true.
So I didn't realise I had such a spicy feeling about that. That like unlocks something.
No, me too. Actually, to be fair, I was getting really annoyed earlier because I was like looking at all these red indicators in Assassin's Creed, a game that, you know, from the name alone, you know, is not going to have a limit, like a small amount of red in it already. And I was like, oh yeah, but thank goodness it's not yellow. That would be really annoying if I was looking for yellow in this environment, like trying to find the red dot to shoot. And I'm just like, oh dear. Anyway, sorry. Little bit of Assassin's Creed angst on me today. So
that's the closest we've ever come to talking about discourse.
Yeah, when I brought up yellow paint today, you guys got real.
Yeah,
I'm so sorry.
I didn't know what I was
0
doing.
to 60 very quick.
I didn't realise I had such a thought about it. Yeah, my apologies.
I know.
I love it. Get on Twitter quickly. Do start off with a Twitter thread that's like question mark. Was it 1 out of question mark? And then that's how you know it's going to be really spicy when they don't know how many tweets it's going to be.
And then it just kind of trails off doing that in the end, and you never really reach a sort of point where you feel like you finished the thread, or you end up with like 22 out of 11 or something.
Yeah.
It goes. I wonder, speaking of ways this could kind of happen in the more AAA space, is that there are rumblings, slightly more credible than the usual rumblings, that there'll be a new Life is Strange game announced this year.
Oh.
And I've been thinking about this for a while. I'm like, how can the next Life is Strange not address the pandemic almost?
Oh, you
like
think?
It's so. I think so, because they always set it like about 5 years in the past. It's always like, you know, the Life is Strange 2 is very much about like the 2016 election, for example. That was like a huge like bit of context for that.
Oh wow, okay.
And I was just like, I feel like if any kind of AAA franchise is gonna, I mean, I consider Life is Strange like very high AA rather than AAA, but it's definitely a AAA publisher at Square Enix.
Uh-huh.
So I think if anything's going to tackle it, it's probably going to be that, which is why I find it. I mean, obviously the next game out, Don't Nod, is going to be the name's gone.
Banished.
Lost Records, which Lost Records is the one that's coming out late this year. Banished just came out. Sorry. Encyclopedic Don't Nod knowledge. But yeah, Don't Nod is self-publishing their next game, but that's going to be like a 90s sort of nostalgia piece with present day sections. And I'm wondering if like, it almost feels like a lot of people are writing around the pandemic at the moment because they don't kind of want to address it, which I totally get, but I would be interested to see a Life is Strange game that actually kind of used the pandemic as a setting. I think would be really interesting.
I'm not sure they will. But at the very least, it'll be like about isolation, about loneliness, about like how we'll separate. It will definitely touch upon those. It would be so bold if they did it about a pandemic. I would be so surprised. I'd be like, go off.
It's meant to be set broadly in the real world, right? So I feel like if you're gonna if you're going to actually use the actual election of Donald Trump as a plot point in one of your games, then it feels like it's not inconsistent.
Do they explicitly mention the name Donald Trump in Life is Strange 2?
They don't, but it's written around to the point where you could not miss
Right,
it.
okay. So
unless you had absolutely no idea of the context.
So maybe they would mention a pandemic, but not COVID-19.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like, to be fair, it's not even like a character who is a stand-in for Donald Trump. It is literally just not saying the name Donald Trump while obviously making that illusion.
It's a smart way of doing it. If anything was going to do it, it'd be a narrative game, right? I don't think it would be like
it would definitely. It would be like something from that whole Telltale, like Don't Nod Deck 9 kind of milieu, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
And obviously, as a fan of those games, like I don't want to see them just do it for the sake of it, but I do think there are some teams out there that I would trust to do actually a very meaningful,
yeah, absolutely,
very meaningful approach to it potentially. So, I mean, I did make the joke at one point with friend of the podcast Mick. I was like, "Oh, next Life is Strange game, it's like you get COVID and then you learn to shoot lasers from your eyes or something."
Oh
it's
my
always
God.
just like a thing happens and then you get a superpower. And I was like, you could do it so badly, but you could also actually do it quite well.
But this is the thing.
So-
Would I want to play a game like that? Like where
I was
it is
thinking
so because like I think the closest thing I've watched media wise is like Bo Burnham's Inside, and that fucked me up. I think about that
cried
daily.
so hard.
So I don't know whether I want something that's like so close to the truth you wouldn't be able to take.
I mean, to be fair, like
I'd be like, oh, no thank you. Close the window, go outside.
Uncomfy.
Yeah, it can get upsetting. It can get really upsetting.
Yeah, massively.
But Life is Strange is known for being like, it doesn't pull its punches, and I respect that a lot.
Exactly.
So if it did do it, like you, Rebecca, I would trust them, and I would be like, I
Yeah,
will trust the
for
process
sure.
Yeah.
through tears.
Like, I was mad. I've played Life is Strange 2 twice, and I was mad at the end both times. I was like really angry.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't think it was done perfectly, but I was partly at least angry for the right reasons, because you're meant to be angry when you think about, you know, the context of what's happening, and that it, you know, things like this do happen to real people, even though we are in this instance talking about a 9-year-old with telekinesis. It's also got, you know, real world implications.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well.
I was really worried that we might not have enough to talk about in this one, and now it's like we've gone for an hour and a half.
I knew
actually.
we'd have enough to chat about.
But that's the thing, like, in terms of like addressing the pandemic directly, but in a way in which is a bit more separated from it, but you know what you know what it's about. 100 times resist, baby. I will not stop going on about this game. Like, that is very much about a virus that wipes out the human race, and people have to survive that, and the panic surrounding that. And like, I've talked about it to death, but like, that is something I'm really looking forward to, because it handles the same feelings and emotions and panic around that, but in a way in which it's in the future. Like, well, it ends up being in the future, like a futuristic setting, and it's like looking back on something, so you are removed. And I like that aspect of it. I'm very comfortable playing that, because it's not so, hey, guess what happened in 2020?
Yes.
We're going to relive that. And it's like, oh no.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely, like, I think safer spaces in fiction that you can create to you know, discuss things like this more comfortably. But I think that's you know, that's what's nice about about indie games being so like abundant at the moment, is that you can find a number of approaches and find one that kind of works for you to address almost any topic. I feel like I would be remiss not to bring us back to Roman Sans Rebuild from the last episode just real quick, because that's another fantastic upcoming time loop game. And, you know, coming out of that, I feel like everything at the moment, you could kind of make the argument. I think it would be tenuous to call it like a post-pandemic game, except that it literally is one, if you get me. But it definitely has that aspect to it in some ways, in that your character is the only one who is like reacting normally to the sort of disastrous situation that they find themselves in. I think is, you know, kind of all, so many things have echoes of the last, not even I suppose the last 5 years, maybe like the last 10 years moreover, just of how a lot of people seem to have this sort of surreal feeling of disconnect.
Yeah.
Which again works in a time loop. It's like, did you all just forget? Did you all just forget what's been happening?
Please let me forget. Please let me forget. Liam, did you have any post-pandemic games that come to mind for you?
I don't think I've really played one yet. And maybe that says a lot about the type of media I'm choosing to avoid at the moment.
I mean, fair.
Yes.
But
100% fair, to be honest.
I was just thinking there about how interesting it would be to have a game that, examines social dynamics between people as much as something explicitly about a pandemic, right? Because that was probably the most challenging part about the pandemic for me, was how we reacted to it as human beings. And so I would love to maybe play a time loop game about that. But I don't know. It's interesting. It's going to be a really fascinating couple of years, I think, to try and examine that trajectory and to try and make connections and, see where we go. But
absolutely. And it's definitely, I'm going to call it now, it's going to be like a good couple of years for indies just generally. Like we already saw 2023 was so strong across the board, but I really feel like indies are about to have their moment because, AAA, it's kind of looking a little iffy at the moment. Just they got some stuff to work
they keep
out.
fucking culling their own studios. It is. Fucking
yeah.
hell.
Well,
that bubble is about
indeed,
to burst,
indeed.
right? Like it.
Yeah.
Please stop.
I think as well. I mean, it's just for me as well. But working at a site that's very focused on AAA, and the direction that we're taking internally with the fact that there's not been much.
No.
So I mean, we're nearly at the end of February, and for me, the only things that I've been excited about are re-releases and kind of weird, again, top end double A's. Like you got your like Prince of Persia, and you've got your Like a Dragon, but there's not been like the big tentpole. The big tentpole was meant to be Suicide Squad, and that has kind of done okay. It's like it was. To be fair, it was set up to be so panned that it has actually come out to kind of an okay reception in the end.
Have you seen those Steam numbers though? You seen those player numbers?
Yes, I have. It's I just think that like generally, and obviously this kind of in a real sense does all come down to post-pandemic effects. It all also comes down to like horrifically bad management at AAA studios that's very investor focused and doesn't seem interested in serving either the audience or the people who actually make the damn games. But
say it louder.
I do think that you'll see
Once
you're gonna
more
see
for the people in the back.
Indies are really stepping up to fill indies and AA's really stepping up to like fill that gap and kind of gap in programming really.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think you'll see a lot more adventurous stuff. You'll see a lot more reflective stuff, and I think that is good. I mean, I can't deny that it's good, although like there's so many bad things to reflect on at the same time. It's like, I just like you say, I need something a bit lighter just for a minute, please, as well.
It's a really good point.
Damn, that's it.
Yeah. This went some places.
Is that it? We done?
I really thought I was going to be here like, so I'm playing Outer Wilds, and it's kind of like it's good in some ways and bad in others. No, we really got into it.
I always like how we just have a free-form conversation with a loose theme. I think it still goes to very interesting, unique places. You both had some very astute points there about time loops and games in general, so I enjoyed that.
You forgot one person in that. You, babes.
Yeah.
Who else? Who else? There's a fourth host has joined the call. Simon Parkin, you've been here the whole time.
Should we chat about our hyperfixations?
Let's do it.
Again,
yes, I think
all the time, every episode. It's a constant state. Who would like to go first? You, Rebecca. I choose you.
Oh, hello. I think I've got a couple, but they're both going to be hopefully quite short. Which is exciting because peek behind the curtain. It's only been a week since we recorded our last episode, and I've managed to become completely fixated on 2 extra things,
shit.
which is it's wonderful how the human brain works, isn't it? Really, when you think about it. But yeah, one of them is that as I spoke about in our last episode, Romancevania, I got back into it. I actually finished it this evening.
I saw you playing it earlier.
I don't usually, I know. I saw you playing Stardew Valley. So, like, I keep seeing Stardew Valley pop up while I'm trying to get Romancevania to launch. I see you.
Nothing.
But yeah,
do not perceive.
It's actually quite funny because it's rare. I don't usually play anything when we're going to record in the evening because I only have a couple of hours between the end of work and coming to record this, so I usually try to avoid playing. But I was just all day, I was like, I know I'm so near the end and I need to finish it because I need to know like what happens. So Yeah, I mean, obviously listen to the last episode for more about my reassessment of Romancylvania, but it is one of the few games I've actually finished this year. I'm quite surprised by, but I'm glad I did. It's very rough. It's rough around the edges still, but it's like great fun, and I'm really glad that I stuck with it and saw it to the end. The other one that I wanted to talk about is one that I could have sworn that I talked about on the podcast before, but then I realised I can't have done because this would have been on my birthday, and my birthday was during that little break we took between the end of the old podcast and the start of this one. So it means I have never actually talked about my obsession with the Ace Attorney movie on this podcast.
Oh, have you not?
And I tell you what, I'm sure I maybe haven't. Oh god, I didn't actually go back and check, but I did. I rewatched it the other day. Anyway, the point is, I rewatched it. Friend of the podcast, Nick, was out for the evening. I had a very, very rare evening completely to myself in the house, and I was like, "What am I going to do?" Of course, I'm going to spend 2.25 hours of this watching the Ace Attorney movie again.
Incredible.
No regrets.
Love it.
Yes!
No regrets. Best video game movie I have ever seen. I don't care. Best video game movie. Get onto the silver podium, Detective Pikachu.
Oh yeah,
the live action Ace Attorney movie is here.
just drop kick that Pikachu off the podium.
Disrespecting Sonic, but go on.
Oh,
I think you'll find Sonic is. Look, I spent a lot of time thinking about this. Sonic's in 4th place. It's not bad. It's not bad.
what's in 3rd? Wait, what's your? Do you have an order?
Yeah, you got to give us the order.
I have a top 5.
Give me that
so
top 5.
1 Ace Attorney.
Yep.
2 Detective Pikachu. 3 Silent Hill. 4 Sonic the Hedgehog, and 5 controversial choice, but Lara Croft Tomb Raider. So there we go.
You know what? Silent Hill and Tomb Raider. I agree. I love those movies. The first Silent Hill movie is good. First Tomb Raider movie is good. My boy Sonic at 4th. You need to talk about this Ace Attorney movie, or we're gonna have a fight.
It's gonna kick off.
Well, actually, I did mean to. One of the reasons that I wanted to bring up the Ace Attorney movie is one that is very good. Very good fun. And it's also really weird because I was like watching some clips from the game yesterday, I think, and I was like, it's very weird to see how they did it in a live action style that is so faithful to the game, but also so weirdly like realistic in other ways. It's very strange. It's like all the sets are so elaborately dressed, but everyone is like a really good cosplayer of the character that they're playing from the games. It's so good. But the reason that I really wanted to bring it up with you guys was because it is on Amazon. It's not on Amazon Prime, but it, you can buy it through Amazon, and Amazon have a watch party function.
Do they?
Like, pals, do we need
Yes.
do we need to have an Ace Attorney movie watch party?
I would love to do that. I've never seen it. And
I would love to do that. That'd be so good.
It's so good. It's honestly like very, very good fun. Because I obviously haven't seen it before, like 6 months ago or so. It was still fresh enough in my mind that I was just there kind of like ad-libbing to it, and I was like, all the time I was just there like, Liam and Rachel would love this.
We need to do that. Okay, we need to do that.
No, we absolutely need to do that.
We need to book that in.
Yes, we do. We need to.
That would be so funny.
We need to book that. Oh man, I would love that. But yeah, genuinely such a good time. Also, like when you rewatch it and like you're like, okay, I understand where the plot's at. So we're just gonna get to the whole like how adorable is Edgeworth though in live action? Like we need to watch this together and then go over this.
I need to know. I need to know. I don't even know what case it is. I literally have no idea. I have no clue.
Do you want to know, or do you want to leave it as a surprise?
Well, if we're going to watch it, we should leave it as a surprise, I feel like. Because if we're going to do it...
I think I should leave this here because I said I'd make it a quick one. So,
okay,
there we go.
All right.
But it could be fun. Could be fun fodder for just a weird little recap at some point, which justifies us just making like evening plans on the podcast.
Yes.
I love that. That's
one
of my favourite things we do.
So into that.
It would be good. It would be so good.
A very good choice. Liam, how about you, babes?
So very quickly, this is not my hyperfixation because we haven't finished season 1 yet, but I just want to mention it because it was Rachel mentioning it a couple of times on the podcast, and then Yoli listening to the podcast that finally made us buy a TV license to watch it. That's how influential you are in this household now. We have been watching season 1 of The Traitors on BBC. Long-time listeners will be familiar with Rachel's obsession with this show. I get it now. Danny DeVito gif. I see it now.
Yes!
It's a fascinating fucking program. It's exciting. It's just camp enough to be like still really fun. And just the way that those people weep openly about a game that they're playing, the speed in which they forget that it's a game and they turn on each other and they're awful to each other is like just from like like I feel like Yoli and I are just like examining it from like this morning we're lying in bed and Yoli was talking about the theory that shame is a natural survival instinct to keep us safe in groups so that we're fed and protected. It's just like that's what this show will make you think about.
Wow.
It's fucking brilliant. So I'm gonna report back. We're not recording for a couple of weeks. I feel like when I come back, we'll have watched a couple of seasons, and I want to talk about it a bit more. But I have to mention Stardew Valley is my habit fixation because this morning I finished it after 65 hours. I reached the end of year 2. I got 4 candles from my dead granddad, and I got the perfect farm trophy. And I've put it down, and I feel weird about it. And I just wanted to kind of address it on the podcast. So I put that game in the vault because although I'd played it 4 or 5 times, I'd never like finished it. I'd never got to like quote unquote the point where the game doesn't really wrap up. There's still so much left to do. And although I would say that for the last 2 months, I was going to bed at 7:30 in the morning after I'd milked my cows just to try and get to the end of the year. I really enjoyed it. And I did love that I was at a point, right? It was almost like I was on like this ship and I'd been on this boat for many months and it was pulling into harbour. And I had the choice of either jumping off and watching it sail away or staying on it, knowing that that journey was going to be 3 times as long if I didn't get off now. Like, I could have done loads more stuff in the mines, loads more. Like, I haven't even been to the additional islands that they added in an update recently.
Oh my god.
But I feel like I'm really bad at sticking with games, and fundamentally, like, first and foremost, I'm really proud of myself for being able to stick with it for 65 hours. That just felt really important to me. But last year was so weird and so difficult for me in many ways, and to sort of have this game that was about escaping from reality and starting a new life and connecting with, you know, nature and people, it had like such a profound and important impact on me. And I guess I just wanted to just acknowledge that, of like, this thing that was made by one person has left me feeling so empty. It became such an important like comfort for me over the last few months, and I feel like it's given me what it needed, and now I can let it go. And yeah, I just really want to say, like, I put that in the vault knowing it was the right move, but now I'm like absolutely certain it was the right move. So yeah, Stardew Valley.
Oh, that's lovely.
Fucking great game. Really enjoyed that.
Yay! That's so nice.
That's so nice. I almost feel bad about dragging up the chat I noticed about your wife, Haley.
No. So what I will say is, I think I did mention, about how basically if you marry Haley, it lobotomizes her, and all she does is make me pancakes every morning. Is so nice to me, and horny, by the way. I don't know why she gets really horny when you marry her. On Christmas, if you talk to her at the Christmas fair, she's like, "What am I thankful for? We'll just wait until we get home." I'm like, "Hold on." Where's this side of you come from? I like it when you bullied me, not when you like me. That wasn't the arrangement we made.
Was she still, crucial information, was she still Goth Haley for this?
No, I never got the Goth Haley mod working, and I'm glad I didn't, because that would have broken my heart too much. No.
Oh gosh.
But I regret Haley.
Yeah.
I must admit, that is one, I would say, flaw with the game, is that relationships with partners in that game become very, "Oh, I've watered your plants." You haven't. There's sprinklers everywhere.
Yeah.
Look at the land that we own. What did you do? Tell you what, you didn't water. You didn't water the plants in the house, which is the only thing is I need to still water. So come on, Haley.
Made you eggs Benedict for breakfast. That's shit. I got other great energy foods. I don't need that.
I'm buying all these miners' treats from the dwarf. Like, what's this?
Yeah, I don't need you. And apparently all you want is this dick. So
that's incredibly classic, like video game relationships, though.
Anyway, just saying, Harvey turned the same. He wasn't horny, I'll give him that, but he was just very much like, "Oh, I love you, made you breakfast," and I was like, "Don't need it, bin. This is taking up an item slot. It's useless to me. I've watched your plants." "No, you haven't." "Yeah, I've got sprinklers. I don't need you."
Yeah.
So
we
lose a bit of personality, but I mean, what can you do? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's not exactly like a romance focused
just divorce
game.
them and
absolutely
just
not.
Find something else.
Yeah. It's also kind of like in the tradition of story of seasons and that, which is
absolutely
extremely troubling in the relationships with the spouses sometimes.
Just so like base level. Before we move on, Yoli was watching Love Island All Stars for most of the time I was playing this, and I named my first baby Mitch.
Oh yeah, baby Mitch.
And regretted it immediately. So Haley kept being like, "Do you think Mitch will be a farmer when he grows up?" I was like, "No,
no,
I don't think he will."
Absolutely not. He'll amount to nothing.
Literally
what is
nothing.
it? You can go and like give them back to the world tree or something, can't you? Like this. Is that?
Yeah, you can like
Stardew Valley, or is that another?
you can like melt them in a pool or something. I can't remember what you do.
Yeah, it's really messed up, right? Because we don't have to keep this in either, but like as a child-free person, I don't like that these games always like force you to have a child eventually if you're just like married for long enough. But the fact that Stardew Valley not only does that, but then allows you to basically like recycle the child if you don't want it, is about the most disturbing way of handling that I can possibly
I
imagine.
did not
By
know
offering
that.
the
That's so funny.
prismatic shards of the shrine, they will permanently remove their children from the game, turning them into doves and setting them free.
Oh, okay, yeah, I do remember that. The doves.
Just ask me if I want to have a kid and let me
That's
say
so
no.
funny.
Like,
Did he? Does it upset your spouse?
Surely not, because that would be fucked,
No.
wouldn't it? That'd be really fucked.
have you been turning the children into doves again?
Where's Mitch? Where's baby Mitch gone? Dove now.
Where's Mitch? Oh, Mitch flew away. What does that mean?
Mitch flew away.
What?
Dove
What are you
now.
on about? Dove now. That's all they say, dove now. Can you stop doveing our child, please? Nope.
Nope.
Dove now.
Dove now.
Oh, anyway, yes. What a journey it's been.
But genuinely, that is really, really heartwarming. And I'm sorry I had to bring it down with irreverent
You
chatter,
brought it up
but, you
way
know.
hard. Like, it was, much better.
Yes, well done. That is a feat. A mighty feat.
Oh, feels like it. What's your hyperfixation, Rachel?
My hyperfixation is True Detective Night Country, which I've been
Ooh.
enjoying. I know some people are a bit hot cold on it. I'm very much hot on True Detective Night Country, which is funny because it's in the cold tundra of Alaska.
Whee.
I've watched all four. Well, I haven't finished this season, but I've watched all 3 previous seasons of True Detective. I'm currently re-watching the first season because I talked about it with my brother, and we talked about it so much that I was like, I got to rewatch it. And yeah, I'm really enjoying the new season. I think it's really interesting. I like that they've gone a bit back to like the spiritual, the supernatural in a way, which is a very harkens back to the first season, or at least like one of the detectives in the first season was very spiritualist to the point of like being almost this kind of archetype that's like a drunken prophet, which I really, really liked about the first season. This one, it kind of is spiritual, and I'm just been really enjoying it. I didn't hate season 2 and 3, but I just think they were missing something. And yeah, I'm very much enjoying this freshness that season 4 is bringing. Yeah, I'm having a good time. I love the 2 protagonists. I think they're great. I hate them, and I love that. I think they're flawed women, and we absolutely live to see it.
Hell yeah.
Yes. What is it? If you respect women's rights, you've got to respect women's wrongs. Absolutely. Night Country is that in a nutshell.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just having a really good time. And yes, I don't want to get too much into it because I haven't seen the final episode yet, but I'm at that point where I don't mind if the final episode, if it ties everything up. If it doesn't, it's neither here nor there. I've had a great time watching it. I think it gets a really good balance between these kind of 2 people. It's kind of like more about their portraits instead of it being about like necessarily like the murder or the mystery that you're trying to solve, which I really like. Yeah, I'm having a great time. And oh my god, what's her name? I always blank on this podcast.
Jodie Foster.
Yeah, tiny woman.
Oh, really?
It's so short. Yeah, I was just like, surely, I don't know, maybe
Jodie
she's
Foster
grown since,
height.
because I don't know, I've not seen her since Silence of the Lambs, and she was kind of small in that, and I was like, nah, she's just gotten smaller. Like, she's a very petite woman, so I was very surprised.
She's 5'3".
I'm
Yeah, when she stands next to certain
I'm really excited for
characters,
this,
she
like-
looks so small, and I'm like, yeah, I live for it.
Is she from that era of Hollywood where all the women were absolutely pocket-sized? Is that...
Was that a thing?
Was that a thing? It's great.
Yeah. I mean, if you've seen, like... So, my partner's rewatching Buffy at the moment, and you really notice that all those women are absolutely tiny.
Teeny
Like,
tiny.
Yeah.
Really, really tiny.
She's pocket-sized. She's a pocket-sized detective. That should
Yeah.
be the next one, season 5.
Yeah. I mean, just for clarity, I'm 5'4", so I'm not, like, having to go at people who are 5'3". Okay, that's not the vibe, but, like, there was this whole era where women were very... Like, the women you saw on TV and in films were, like, very, very narrow and short as well. And I feel like you see, even now, you do see a bit more body type diversity than you did in, like, the 90s. And,
Yeah.
you know.
Is she only 5'3"? She looks small. Maybe it's just that maybe they have other tall actors. I don't know. I'm surprised at that, because, yeah, that's not that much shorter than you. And you're not short. I feel like she's like, yeah, maybe, I don't know, maybe it's me. No, she is small. She is small. I don't think it is me. She's just like, yeah. Anyway, she's great in it as well.
Well, awesome.
So good.
I mean, thanks for the recommendation, because, like, I've loved all of True Detective. I don't know why I've not started Night Country yet, except that I'm just terrible at actually sitting and watching TV. I think for me, the victim of the pandemic was the last of my attention span, so that's probably why.
I feel that.
Preach.
But yeah, definitely looking forward to this one. And now that I have your recommendation on it, because I've been, like, avoiding reviews or any sort of chats about it, but knowing that you like it, that's good.
Yeah,
That's good
I
to
wouldn't
know.
say it's like blown my socks off, or it's like you gotta watch this show. But just in terms of, like, it's a good detective mystery. I like the setting. I think the Alaska, it's like takes place in, like, the long night, so that point where the sun
Ooh,
doesn't
yes.
rise.
Ooh, that's exciting.
So it's just got a really good vibe about it, and yeah, the fact that it's a bit more spooky and supernatural really was just like, yeah, I'm in it. I think it does get a
Nice.
bit, it loses its way a little bit, but I don't know about you both, but I will if a show, if, like, I don't know, there's nice shots and the environment is cool and I like the characters enough, sometimes if it gets a bit like the mystery doesn't quite land perfectly, I tend to be quite forgivable.
Yeah, I
As 3
definitely
fans
get
of Twin Peaks, where that show just fucking didn't get any sort of resolution, was all over the shop, I feel like shows
Yep.
like, True Detective, Night Country, I'm so
Yeah.
forgivable. I'm just like, yeah, but it's the vibe is there. I'm into the vibe. It's cool. I'm into it. Yeah.
For sure. I mean, you're talking to someone who's watched, like, 12 seasons of American Horror Story, and you'll have, like, people going, like, did it get bad at season 2 or season 3? And I'm like, here I am chilling at season 12. Like, yeah, I'm having a good time. I'm still
Yes.
enjoying this. This has got, like, good aesthetics
Right?
and
Yeah.
like, a fun setup,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Didn't you watch all of The Walking Dead as well?
I've watched all of the main series. I've never watched any of the spin-offs because that was too much, but I did watch.
Herculean feat.
It finished, like, last year or the year before. It's season 11.
Did it?
So.
Oh, only 11? I feel like that was on for like 20 years, but that doesn't make any sense. Yeah, 11 makes sense.
I mean, it was, like, technically, I guess it was technically 12 because the way they ran it through the pandemic was they extended seasons 10 and 11 to like contain what would have been season 12 as well within them.
Oh.
So I guess technically it ran for 12 years, but for 11 seasons. So
That makes sense. Wild.
Yeah.
Damn. Yeah, I need to
Yeah.
watch True Detective. I've never seen it. So yeah, I'll add that to my list.
The first season is pretty good.
Yeah.
the way I saw the first season was my partner and I were both really ill, and we binged it in 2 days while unable to get up from the sofa.
Oh wow.
And I tell you what, that is some next level way of engaging with that like, because it's quite Lovecraftian, like, in its, you know, implied cosmic horror,
Wait, what?
despite it's it's like a
I didn't realize it was
How-
supernatural.
how do I explain it?
That's
Like,
wild.
it is still very much like a detective and like a mystery show, but there is always, to some extent, like a bit of a supernatural, like, it could be supernatural, it could just be that people in the situation really believe that something
Ooh.
supernatural's happening
Okay.
to influence it.
I feel like I don't know much about the show.
So
All right, okay.
It never gets full on horror, but there'll always be someone in the story who believes that something like that's happening.
Like,
Interesting.
for me, it's basically Matthew McConaughey's character. Is that his name? Matthew.
Oh yeah.
It's like Woody Harrelson is like the straight man of like the
Mm.
show. He's very
Mm.
like, it's in Louisiana, which again, I just like media set in Louisiana swamps. Like, I like
Mhm.
media
Oh my
and
God.
games and films.
Play Gabriel Knight with me.
Right? I like games about like these communities, the American Gothic, and like,
Mhm.
and so
Mhm.
this detective is like, I think it's cosmic in the way of this guy is so caught up in his own philosophy, and he spouts like endless poetry about like philosophizes about the stuff, and a lot of time Woody Harrelson's like, shut the fuck up, and I'm like, yeah, I agree, like stop talking. But it's just this, again, like a character portrait about this man and why he behaves the way he is, and how he approaches the case is very, and his past is so like kind of fucked up, but you never really see it. It's just him talking about it, and he's the person he is today because of past events, and how he's contextualized it through like basically reading a fuck ton of philosophy and like taking the wrong aspects of it and applying it to himself, which I don't think is healthy in any sort. Like, he is really fucked up. And so,
Interesting.
yeah, I think, I mean, to be fair, there's a lot of like murdered naked women in the first season, which, I mean, at this point for detective shows, I'm just like, it's by the by, whatever. But if you can kind of get over that aspect of like, I just think it's just, yeah, those two characters are so good. I really, really like, they're really interesting.
Oh, yeah.
It's got
Mm.
shit, what was that Netflix show with the two people? And it was like analytical like it's like psychology, the introduction of that. Oh, why do I forget everything?
Wasn't not Headhunters?
Mindhunter.
Mindhunter.
Which I quite enjoyed because, again, it was more about these two detectives and like their outlooks, their perspectives. But yeah, True Detective is good. I don't remember a lot of the Lovecraftian stuff, but I'm rewatching it, and I watched it a long time ago, so I'm gonna be like, oh my god, I remember now.
I mean, it's I suppose not technically Lovecraft, because it's like the King in Yellow is the thing that they're on about, which is not Lovecraft. It was one of Lovecraft's mates in the whole cosmic horror scene in the 20s and 30s, I guess. But I remember the King in Yellow being quite a big part of it. So
yeah, I think it's a good show. But I don't know, how did you feel about, very quickly, about 2 and 3? Because they were okay, seasons 2 and 3, but I wasn't as into them as this one.
I really liked 3, mainly because Mahershala Ali is so good in that. And I thought that like it struck the balance well. I think 2 was really good. I think if season 2 had been season 1, then people would have been like, this show is amazing throughout. But because people came into season 2 with the expectations of season 1, I think it kind of like shot itself in the foot.
Yeah. Season 1 definitely set a tone, and when season 2 was different, people were like, hey, what's this?
Yeah. And then season 3 was kind of like just back on track enough that it was like able to please the fans while still like being its own story. And I loved some of the shot. I like the final shot of season 3.
Oh,
like,
shit.
Honestly made me quite tearful. Like,
yeah,
because of the way it's like, I don't know. I probably shouldn't go into it too much, but like, yeah, it was the emotional build I felt in his story, like this, you know, throughout his life, from being like quite a young man in Vietnam, and then you go all the way through to when he's like an elderly widow who's starting to feel the effects of dementia, and obviously that in itself is just so well done.
I'm gonna have to watch this.
Yes, I think season 1 probably.
I'll definitely try season 1, 100%.
Yeah, season 1, like the good thing about it is you know they're all pretty discreet, so you don't need to commit to the whole thing. You get the whole story in one season.
But yeah, if that's everything, do we have any shout outs? Do we have any asks for our listeners? Anything to go out, or are we good?
Yes, if you could send your questions in to contact at indieventurepodcast.co.uk, contact at indieventurepodcast.co.uk. We haven't released the last episode yet, so I don't know if any of you've sent any questions in, but if you haven't yet, if you wouldn't mind, for your old pal Liam, please, that would be lovely.
Yeah, we got a mailbag episode coming up, so we would love your questions about anything.
We would.
Indie games,
yeah, about literally anything.
Who you would date in Stardew Valley, or who you married in Stardew Valley, and why? Love to do it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do it. Send them in.
Yeah, just tell us who you romanced in various video games. I would love to like, take a poll on
Why
that.
not send us a list of like, we'll judge you.
Yeah. I'll make a list as well. We can judge me too. It's fine. We'll all get judged together.
Judge us right back. We want to hear, like, if you have a hot take.
Yeah.
Not too mean, but
not too mean. Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
Please, I'm sensitive.
I'm really hopeful that if you've made it this far, you don't hate any of us too much.
We still have pretty high ratings, so no one has listened and been like, fuck this, to the point they want to like let us know, which I think is quite good. So
Yes.
yeah.
Okay,
Hopefully nothing too mean. Don't send hate mail, do you know what I mean? But like a bit of texture's fine, and some unhinged questions will be good.
I mean, you can try. It's going straight in the bin.
Yeah, I simply won't read it.
We're
One of us will read
we're
it and
not
delete
reading
it.
that. Yeah. But yes, thank you so much for listening to this episode, and we'll be back here soon, looping around in 2 weeks' time, again and again.
All right.
Bye.
See you in the next one.
Bye. Indieventure is a podcast created, hosted, edited, and produced by Rebecca Jones, Rachel Watts, and me, Liam Richardson. For more information, search Indieventure Podcast on your social media platform of choice. You can get in touch by sending your questions, comments, and feedback to contact@indieventurepodcast.co.uk. You can support the show by rating us 5 stars and leaving a nice review on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast provider, or let your friends know all about the good times you had with the Indieventure Podcast. Some of the games we talk about on the show may have been provided to us for free for review consideration. If you are a developer, a publisher, or a PR looking to get in touch, drop us an email at hello@indieventurepodcast.co.uk. Our intro music and stings are from the song Cigarette Boat by Mark Torch. Thank you so much for listening, and see you again in 2 weeks for another episode of Indieventure, a video games podcast. Bye for now.